Okay, we have our grayscale from last time where we painted a grayscale that goes from light to dark using just white and black while we're mixing. Now we're going to try and do that same thing with colors. And we're going to start with an analogous color scheme. Analogous means colors next to each other on the color wheel. So you'll grab your color wheel and pick 3 to 4 colors that are next to each other on the color wheel. It's easy to identify analogous colors when they look alike, like this blue-violet, blue, and blue-green. But sometimes the colors might not look very much alike. You could go as far as doing something like this red-orange, the magenta, and this red-violet and violet. Those 4 colors, they all have red in them, and that's what makes them analogous. They have a common hue. You mix red or magenta to get this color, this color, this color, and this color. Even though orange and violet don't look alike, they could still be analogous. If we choose this section, these colors really look related, and it's easier to identify as being analogous. But move just one section over and we still got analogous here. So I'm going to pick those. Let's start with these 3, the red, orange, the magenta, and the violet that's next to magenta. Those will be my analogous color choices. So starting with just straight magenta, that's kind of the easiest to get to be light and dark. Got some left over from when I was doing the color wheel, so move that over here. And that's my base color. So this is the color that I want to put in the middle of my value scale. Magenta. You might think that the easiest way to do this would be to mix that kind of gray in the magenta and this kind of gray in the magenta so that it matches up, but that doesn't work. What that does is just make the color look toned, what we call toned, by adding gray to it. You want to make this color look darker and lighter, and there's a couple ways to do it. Lighter, you always use white. So to get this super, super light, close to white magenta, I'm going to get a lot of white, the tiny bit of magenta, just so that it is tinted just ever so slightly with that magenta. Almost white, not quite. So looking at this and comparing it to the gray above it, they should be similar in value. Add a little bit more magenta. Tilt the scale a little bit so that we've got more of the magenta hue than white. Makes that tint a little bit darker. Try not to get some of that gray in there. Lots more magenta. Still a tiny bit of white in there. And like I was saying before, sometimes when you paint it on the paper, the color might look a little bit different, and maybe I'll want to mix that a little bit darker. You can add maybe just a touch of magenta to your brush to darken it up. And now I'll put straight magenta in this block. There's a little water in my brush, and when that happens, you can see some of the white of the paper through the magenta, which makes it look lighter. That's another way that you can tint your colors. Now I want the magenta to get darker, and I'm going to go the traditional way and add black to it. Sometimes though, I think it's okay to try and do something like add a little bit of blue to it to make it darker. But we're going to keep it traditional. And I like to move some of the paint over here so that I've got a reserve of magenta left over just in case I need to remix it. What if I add too much black and I gotta start all over? Somehow I lucked out, and I think I got a pretty good dark. No, that looks way too black. I had too much black on my palette knife. See what I mean? I screwed up. So I don't like what I did right there, so I'm going to try and wipe it up with some of the paper towel. If it was too black and I tried to paint on top of it, the black might have shown through, so I might as well just get rid of it and then paint my new color that I like much more on top. It should say shade. When you add black to a color, it's called a shade. Now I'll add a lot more black so that I can get the super dark magenta that I want. Much darker. You can see the water fell down from my brush right there and got into the paint and thinned it out. Just gonna paint on top of it. It's still really thin. I'm gonna let that dry, maybe mix up a little bit more of this dark magenta and blend that in a little bit better so it looks darker and richer. If I keep trying to paint on top of the wet paper right now, it'll just keep absorbing and moving around and not doing what I wanted to do. So I'm just gonna have some patience, move on to my next color, mix the value scale of that next color, which I believe is going to be this red-orange, and make a value scale of that so that I can have like a key of different values over here to use for our project.